To the New England Football Show presented by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Sarianides. And as always, I am joined by my partner, Kevin Stone. Kevin, how are you on this Marathon Monday?
Doing good, man. I know you were out there. How was it?
Oh, it was awesome. A lot of fun, man. The last couple of years, we've decided to take in the marathon. The company that my wife works for has people running in it. So rather than spending a day of going to work, she can go and volunteer to set up their tent and everything else. And you're right, it's set up right in Natick Center there and about the 10-mile mark. And you set up, you watch the wheelchair division come in first, then the men, then the women. Um, it's a fun morning. It's a really fun morning. I get the socks uh, on as well. So it was a good time. Like I said, second year in a row that we've done that. Really enjoyed it, but it was a beautiful day for it. Last year the weather was nice. This year the weather was nice as well. It was a beautiful day for it. So a great turnout. I mean, the marathon. Say what you want about Massachusetts, and I know a lot of people have their issues with where we live right now, but this is still a great tradition in our state. Uh, it's awesome, and it's something that what's great about it, not to get corny, is we share it with the rest of the world. I mean, you got people from all 50 states there. You got people from other countries that come to run in it. So it's a fantastic event, great day, and Sox beat the White Sox as well, 4-2 to take 3 out of 4. So it's a good start to school vacation week, and of course, we'll have the NFL draft later on this week.
No, I was gonna say, as long as there's good weather, it's one of the best days of the year
It
around here.
really is. It really is. And for years, I mean, I used to go to it when I was younger, but for years, a lot of my friends would still go to it. And I didn't mind going to watch, but I've never been a drinker. So for me, I wasn't going to go and sit there and pound cold ones. But you know what? You see why, especially with young people, you see why it's such a popular event because, again, it's a great day out, especially if it's a beautiful day. I mean, we've had years where it's been in the 40s and 50s and rainy. But you get a day like today where it's 65 degrees, sun and clouds. It's perfect for the runners. It's perfect for the spectators. It was a good day indeed. I do want to remind you that we are brought to you by Mortgage Right. If you're in the market to sell your current home and purchase your next home, purchase your first home, or refinance, give our friend Herb Devine a call at 781-254-2846. You can also shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. With over 27 years of experience, he is the man you need in your corner if you're looking to get into the right program to purchase your next home. Again, give him a call at 781-254-2846 or shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. All right, Kevin, we're running a little behind here, partly because it's been a busy day. Also, my beloved Montreal Canadiens are in the playoffs. They're down 1-0 after one, which is annoying to the Washington Capitals, who are almost as worthless of an organization as the Boston Bruins. But nonetheless, down 1-0. Look, for me, when I look at the Canadiens this year, youngest team in the league, I didn't expect them to make the playoffs. The fact that they're there, it's a bonus. I think we've got a lot of playoffs in our future here with what this team has built, but I don't think this is going to be the year they make a cup run. I'm just happy that they're there. We'll see what they do. Enough hockey talk. Let's get into football. Of course, the NFL draft kicks off this Thursday night with round one. Rounds 2 and 3 will be on Friday night. Rounds 4 through 7 will be on Saturday. And I'll be honest with you, Kevin, and I know you feel this way. It's about time. It's about time to have this draft. And I don't want to sound like an a-hole when I say this. I want to have it. I want to see what they do, what direction they go in, who they draft. And I kind of want to move on from it because one of my issues, and I love the NFL draft, I've been covering it for 25 years, but one of my issues, especially in recent years, is it's just way too long. I think it needs to be moved up. I don't think we need to be going into the end of April here. I mean, you've got about a 2-week window at the end of pro days in the draft. Even if you bump it up a week, it should have been this past weekend, or if not this past weekend, because it would have run into the Easter holiday. Fine, do it the weekend before. My point is, do we really need to wait until the end of April? I mean, it's just such a long period of time in between the end of the football season, those all-star games, and where we're at now. I'm ready for this event to come. I'm ready to see what the Patriots do. I know you are as well. I think you've just about had enough of the pre-draft process.
Well, look, there's two things here for me. One, I was talking to my dad yesterday over Easter dinner, and he didn't even realize he used to be a big draft guy. He would watch it every year. It was one day. Like when I was a kid, up until this is only somewhat recent that it's been the 3 days. I feel like 5, 6 years maybe. Like I could be wrong, but
Yeah,
this is
it hasn't been that long.
no. So it's still relatively new, and I do for media
Well, it
purposes.
started as a one-day event, then it went to two,
Yes.
where they were doing the first round on Friday night, and then they were doing the rest of the draft on Saturday, and then now it's this 3-day format. So
Well, so I might be misremembering, but wasn't it always a one-day event on a Saturday or Saturday, Sunday?
no,
Like,
it was.
okay,
It
yeah,
was. I
so
mean, really up until about 10, 15 years
yeah,
ago is when it changed.
right.
Yeah.
So this is still taking
Well,
getting
it's 15 years ago. I feel like in the late 2000s, early 2010s is when they changed the format.
so it's still getting taking used to for everybody. Media wise, I do like it because we're able to separate and talk about each night without having to cram 200 and whatever picks it is all into one day or 2 days. So I do like that. But the other problem, and it's more locally, the Patriots have been so bad. We're having to talk draft in December or November. So we're talking about it way earlier than we used to. And I think that's where some of the fatigue has to come from. I mean, again, last year, how soon are we talking about the three quarterbacks? Like we were talking about them in October. So that hasn't helped either. I actually think that's the biggest factor in people getting this draft fatigue. But yeah, I mean, we talked about this last week. It's one of the most fascinating, intriguing, and important drafts for the Patriots in my lifetime, at least. So yeah, let's get to it. Let's see how everything plays out because there's so many different avenues they can take.
Well, and I think that's where I'm coming from with this whole thing. If there's any fatigue on my part, it's because I'm tired of seeing mock drafts. We don't get into that anymore. Admittedly, we're gonna do a couple this week. Our Paul Falzella is gonna put one together, and I'll throw something together on Thursday. But we don't go into the mock draft stuff in January. It's silly season to me, and I've said this now for years. I think that mock drafts are killing the industry in a lot of ways because yeah, it's fun for the fans and the fans can do them and that's fine. They can speculate, they can do whatever they want, but it really drives me nuts whenever you go on X or any social media platform, really, someone else has a mock draft up there and they're cramming them down your throat on a week-to-week basis. And I don't even bother to look at them. I don't care. I have no interest in other people's mock drafts. I really don't. It's not me being an a-hole. I'm being honest. Like it's overkill. It's so overdone. If
Way
you're
too much.
putting out mock drafts in January and February, you're a friggin' idiot because you still have pro days, you still have the combine, you have so many things to work through that a mock draft in February is just flat out idiotic because guys' stock is going to rise and fall. That's just the reality of the business. That's just the reality of the pre-draft process. And so all these guys that want to get a jump start on mock draft 1.0 but by now they're on to mock draft 0.70. Like, stop. We don't need 8 million mock drafts. At the end of the day, especially if you cover a team that's picking in the top 5, realistically, it's pretty cut and dry what direction they're going to go in, barring a trade. So I just find it to be nauseating. It's too much. And the other problem I have with it, to be honest with you, Kevin, is I feel it's lazy. I feel that it's an easy way to cover the draft without actually having to do the meat and potatoes work, which is watching the film and then sharing your thoughts on the players. I feel like in lieu of that, a lot of people feel compelled to put out 8,000 mock drafts in a 3-month span. It's like, cut the crap. We don't need the 8,000 mock drafts. Pump the brakes. There are other ways that you can cover the event without constantly cramming mock drafts down people's throats. It just, again, I know I like to bitch and moan, but the reality is it's stupid.
Just to put it simply, it's the definition of clickbait. Like
It is.
it's
Yeah,
again now
absolutely.
for complete transparency. There's often times where we talk and it's hey, this might get some eyes on it. let's throw it up. So I get why people do it, but there's just so much overkill now. Like you said, it's almost useless at this point. And again, like you said, if you know what your team is picking, now this year is different again. Last year, we knew what the Patriots were going to do. They had no
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah. They had
This
to
year is
take a
much
quarterback.
different
Yep.
because there's so many options. But either way, it's still, you're right, it's overkill.
It is overkill. And again, I get it. We're in the business. You know what? We've got great people covering the Patriots in this market, whether it be NBC Sports Boston, the Herald, the Globe, you name it. We've got great people covering ESPN, of course, with the great Mike Reese. We've got great people covering the Patriots across the board. And people are going to do what they do content-wise. And again, it's good content. But my issue is whether it be at the local level or even the national level, it's just too much with these mock drafts. And I think part of it is if you've got inside information, and we've been lucky to be in business now for over 5 years. So, we've been able to cultivate some sources and people that we trust, and they talk to us and they share information with us privately. And you know what? Whatever we can share, we'll put it out there. I don't care. I wrote a piece about stuff I've been hearing about the Patriots last week. If it's something that I get from one of my sources and I feel it's a credible piece of information, I'm going to put it out for our fans and our viewers and our followers like anybody else would. But again, I do think that that's where the value is for fans, right? Fans want to know, what are people hearing? What are they talking about? What could their team do? Mock drafts fall under that umbrella, but again, like we said, they're overdone. All right, so with all that said, I'm going to put aside the belly aching now for in terms of mock drafts, and obviously Thursday night is round one. Patriots, of course, have pick number 4. They could go in a myriad of directions here. Now, I'm doing a Patriot simulation piece, which I'm going to post after the show tonight. Look, I think they can go in one of 5 directions here. Okay, one, they can trade the pick, which I still think is in play. I do think that they'll probably have conversations this week. From what I've heard talking to a couple of people, from what I have heard around the league, it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of buzz in regards to teams moving up. This is one of those drafts where the vibe around the league is the teams are going to be more willing to stand pat and draft. There isn't that elite level quarterback that teams are going to jockey to move up and get, or that elite level group of quarterbacks like we saw last year. So them trading down right now is probably a 25 to 30% option from what I'm hearing. It's the probability of them trading down is, I don't want to say slim to none, but it seems like it's pretty slim from what people are telling me around the league. I think the other thing here is what happens in front of them. Okay. Now we all know, and I think it's a safe bet that Tennessee is going to take Cam Ward. But what does Cleveland do at 2? What do the Giants do at 3? Cleveland, to me, Kevin, isn't as much of a wild card at 2. I think it's going to be Travis Hunter. The draft really starts at 3 with the Giants. Do the Giants say to themselves, all right, you know what? We like Shedeur Sanders enough that we're going to take him, let him marinate, and make him our starting quarterback? Or do they say to themselves, and of course they worked him out in person this past Thursday, or do they say to themselves, you know what? He's not our guy. We like certain things about his game, but there aren't enough things about his game that we like. So we're going to pass. We're going to take Abdul Carter, beef up our pass rush, try to get through this season with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, and we'll re-enter the quarterback market if we have to next year. Now, of course, Brian Daboll, Joe Shane, they're kind of on thin ice there in New York, so I'm not so sure that they would be keen on a plan like that. And then there's the Patriots at 4. Now, if let's say it goes Ward, Hunter, Carter, I think the Patriots really like Will Campbell, man. And I've talked to people that have told me that. They have told me that the Patriots internally like Will Campbell. So if that's the case, I know people have made a lot about the arm length and the wingspan. If in fact that's the case, that internally there's some consensus on Campbell and they like him, just take the player. I know people have bandied about a Tyler Warren, or they've talked about a Ted McMillan, or they've talked about possibly, reaching for someone else like an Ashton Genty. I don't get the sense that that's where they're going to go here. I think that if push comes to shove and they stick and pick, it's going to be Will Campbell.
So yeah, I've been on that train for a while now. I wasn't. Look, we've been talking for, again, since December. you go tackle first round, right? Like no matter what, they almost have to
I've been
do it.
on record of saying it for weeks now.
Yeah.
I would take offensive tackles with the first 2 picks. I think they've done enough in free agency, Kevin, that they can really focus on that position. And there's enough depth at the offensive tackle position that they can take 2 of them. And I'd be perfectly fine with that. They don't need a receiver in the second round. Don't give me edge rusher. I think you have enough there. I would be all in on them taking 2 OTs.
The only reason I could see them or be happy with
And that's
them
not going to happen, by the way.
no,
I would do it, but I don't think they're going to.
the only way I'm thrilled if they don't take Campbell is if you're going Tyler Warren. And I've been on that for a while now. I know other people in the media market have as well. I posted
Well,
something.
pick a train. You were on the Campbell train. Now you're on the Warren train. Which train are you on here? You can't be on 2 trains at once.
So look, the way Mike Vrabel talked about tight ends at the NFL owners meetings makes me think it's a realistic possibility. But you need tackles so badly, and I do think there's something to be said for playing in the SEC. I don't care what his freaking arm length is. He was a talented player in the most difficult conference to play in the country. So I think he's going to be fine at tackle. Like you've said for weeks, worst case scenario, he's a guard for 10 years for you. But
people don't want to hear that though.
Well, of course not.
And you know that. They don't want to hear that you took a guard at pick 4. They just
and in fairness, I think at 4, you need to be sure of him being a tackle. If you're going to do it that high, because of some of the other talent that might still be there. I know we talked a ton about it not being a quote unquote blue chip draft. It's a draft and there's still a lot of talented kids there. So let's not get nuts. Again, going back to the oversaturation, there's still going to be kids here that make immediate impacts in the NFL.
I do want to go back to Vrabel's media availability last Tuesday when he met with the media in his one and only pre-draft presser. He said a couple of interesting things. One, he believes, according to him, he and the organization believe that there are several offensive tackles in this class that can play and make an immediate impact. So with that said, that almost leads me to believe that they may go best player available at 4 because they feel that they can either trade back into the first round if they had to, or stay at 38 in the second round on Friday night and take one of those tackles. And to a degree, I think that there is enough depth at the offensive tackle position, even if you get past a Will Campbell, an Armand Membu, even a Kelvin Banks, who a lot of teams are projecting as a guard. You get past those guys, there's that second wave of tackles that I think is going to go late first, early second with Ariante Ursary, Ozzie Trapillo, Josh Connerly. So there's guys, there's going to be a third wave too with Anthony Belton and Charles Grant and Wyatt Milam. There's going to be about 3 waves of tackles that are going to go in this draft. But I thought it was interesting that Vrabel talked about the fact that they believe that there's enough depth at that position that they're comfortable taking an offensive tackle early and them stepping in and producing. Again, I found that interesting because what that tells me is they may entertain going best player available at 4, to your point about Tyler Warren.
Well, I was going to say, that's why I think it might still be a possibility. I could see them easily trading down, too. And I know that's not...
Yeah, but there's got to be an offer there.
Of course. And that's not
earth shattering. If Sanders goes at 3, let's say, could someone trade up to try to take a run at Abdul Carter? Sure, well, but I will say this. There's not much of a difference between Abdul Carter and Jalen Walker, who's another guy when we talk about best player available and what direction they can go in. Everybody's so hyper-focused on Tyler Warren. It could be a Jalen Walker.
And his name's been thrown out there. When it comes to
and I've talked to a couple of people that said to me, and I know Mike Giardi had something about this about a month ago, that internally the Patriots really like him, that they're scouts, they're people that have been out on the trail. They really like Walker. And Walker does bring that scheme versatility that Vrabel wants. He can play off the ball. He can play on the ball. He can rush the passer. He can drop in coverage. So he's a vertical piece. So he to me is the defensive version of Tyler Warren. If they pass on Will Campbell, if they pass on Tyler Warren, he could be a guy, if Abdul Carter is gone, that could be in play at 4 if they have to stick and pick.
And you hear people sort of saying, well, Carter might be an issue now in terms of he's just a show up and play on Saturdays or, in this case, Sunday guy. Again, it's lying season, But you wonder if the Patriots take that into account.
Let's not be politically correct. It's bullshit season.
Well,
It's bullshit season, and it's not
yeah,
fair to these kids. I've said
no,
it for years that you're playing with people's character when you start putting out stupid crap like this.
yep.
And it really bothers me. And I'm not defending Carter. I don't know him personally. I don't know what kind of a teammate he is. I don't know what kind of a person he is. But it really bothers me that this bullshit makes its way through the media. And unfortunately, Kevin, teams listen to some of this nonsense.
Well,
Instead of leaning on their scouting reports and their homework, they listen to what the media has to say with some of this stuff.
well, that's why I bring it up, because how much has culture been talked about since Vrabel got here? And the roster building has been about culture guys. Now, to your point, when Vrabel talked the other day, he said, "Look, we can't win with just good guys."
Yes.
So,
You
so
just
they
took the
know.
words out of my mouth.
Yeah. So look, they know, and he's been teammates with some pricks. Look at William McGinnis. You hear stories about him in the locker room, stuff like that. So I don't necessarily think they'll take that into a ton of consideration, but it's going to be talked about. It has to be. So you hope that they don't back off a guy because of character. At this point, they can't afford to. They need to stockpile talent and a lot of it. I do ultimately think they end up with Campbell, but I could see Warren being a pick, and I could also see them, like you talked about, that second wave. If you end up with Warren and Ozzie Trapillo or something like that on night one or early into night two, like, you can't complain about that as a fan, given some of the other stuff they've done in free agency. So again, it's fascinating. I do think they end up going best player, but for me, best player for them might be Campbell, simply because of the need too. So again, Vrabel has often said, you hope they align. You hope that you need.
He said that on Tuesday.
Yeah, and he said it a lot. So ultimately, for us and for fans, I hope that's the case too. I just have a feeling the way Vrabel wants to play, and how physical they were in Tennessee. Campbell reminds me of a Taylor Lewan type of guy. And again, I've gone back. I've said this a few weeks now. I love the chip on his shoulder already because of all the people talking about his arm length. Like, he's going to use that throughout his career. And again, I know that doesn't win you one-on-ones, and it doesn't guarantee you're an all-pro or a pro bowler. But if you have a kid of his caliber who played in the SEC coming in with something to prove, well, then you're golden at that position. So I do think they end up going Campbell, but again, it's going to be fascinating on Thursday night.
Just to go back to your point about you can't just win with a bunch of good guys, this was Vrabel's exact quote when he was asked about the importance of bringing in guys like Morgan Moses and character. He says, well, we don't want to take risks. I mean, I think we want to be aggressive. I think there's a difference between taking risks and being aggressive and adding quality players and people to the roster. That'll happen throughout player acquisition. I think that's something that's important, but certainly the talent of the player has to be evaluated first. Then you go through a lot of different exercises and conversations and try to figure out the type of person. You can't win and you can't do what you want to do with just a bunch of good dudes. That's not going to get it done. Amen. Amen. Look, I've been in football for 30 years. I've coached small college. I've coached high school. I've coached semi-pro. You win with a diverse set of players, a diverse locker room. You hope that you can bring in good people that are good football players. But sometimes you're going to bring in people who are pricks, who are a pain in the ass, who are tough to handle, but can play. Some of the greatest players in NFL history were not exactly upstanding citizens. So this idea that, well, we want our cake and we want to eat it too, where we want to get Boy Scouts who can also pick up 15 and a half sacks and blow plays up in the backfield. That ain't going to happen. Those guys aren't Boy Scouts. They're not rubbing sticks together trying to make a fire when they're 8, okay? Those guys are usually growing up in tough environments, and that environment motivates them, and that motivation leads to them becoming professional athletes. So to Vrabel's point, while it would be nice to have a locker room full of high-character guys that are good in the community, good in your locker room, good on the field, and upstanding citizens, it's not realistic. And if you have more of those guys and not enough talent, you're not going to win football games. And let's face it, this isn't a popularity contest. It's a business. It's about putting a winning product on the field. It's about getting asses in seats. It's about winning championships. And if you want to do that, like I said, you're going to have a diverse locker room. You're not going to have a bunch of guys that are just good husbands, good family men. They go to church every Sunday. They do 150 hours a week of community service. Look, they can do all those things, but if they can't play, you're going to suck. So it doesn't matter. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I'm glad that Vrabel talked about that, though, Kevin, because I think a lot has been made about his emphasis of culture and character. And I think it's important to realize that there's separate rules for separate players. And if you get a guy in here that comes in with a little bit of baggage, it's up to Vrabel, it's up to the players, it's up to the established culture to help that guy adjust and produce.
It's funny. Imagine if Tom Brady was an asshole. Like, what would people have thought? Did you want him off
I
the
don't think it
team?
would have mattered to the fans, to be honest with you. As long as he's not putting his hands on
Right.
women and kids or well, I don't want to go into the murdering people thing because we've been there before. But my point is, as long as he's not doing those things, if he's not nice to the media, if he doesn't sign some kid's autograph at training camp, then he doesn't do those things. If he's a dude, he's a dude. Listen, the reality is, man, I've coached for 30 years. I hate to say this, not that people don't already know this, Kevin, and I think this applies to any team sport. You're going to put up more from your best players than you will guys that are in the middle tier of your team or that are on the bottom third of your roster in terms of their importance to the franchise. You're going to put up with more when it comes to your best players. That's just a fact of life, and I hate to burst people's bubbles. They're also going to have a separate set of rules that they play by because, again, they're your best players and you need them. So
yeah, of course,
that's the reality. Any coach that comes out here and tells you that they're going to win with upstanding citizens, they're full of shit.
Of course. And I also thought it was interesting or sort of important to note. It was Mike Giardi that asked that question, if you remember. And before he even got it out, Vrabel stopped him and said, yeah, it's important in terms of the talent over the character. So he knows. He's well aware. And I think that goes back to, look, Mayo obviously played in the league, but they were not on the same page in terms of what they're looking for. It's very clear what the team is looking for. Yes, you want good character, but we need to win games quickly. We need more talent than anything else. And I think they get that. So I'm hoping the Carter thing, if he is there for, you run the card up. But if he is, I hope it doesn't play a factor and they do pass on him. But who knows? You might have that scenario pop up.
Well, he talked about Carter. He talked about Carter last week. He didn't get into details as far as how the visit with Carter went. But he talked about the fact that he's very impressive on film, that he passes the eye test, that he's exactly what we think he is. So with that being said, they brought him in for a top 30 visit. He didn't take many top 30 visits to begin with.
No, 4, I think.
Yeah, he did 4. So they brought him in for a top 30 visit. That just goes to show you 2 things. 1, he wants to play here if they pick him. And 2, they obviously like him as a player and would probably pick him if he were on the board. I think he'd be their pick if he were there. But I think at the end of the day, again, even with the speculation and the talk that he's not an upstanding citizen, at the end of the day, they brought him in. They're going to get to know him, and they're going to figure out whether or not he's a piece that fits their puzzle. Let's not forget, as we made our way through free agency in March, there was a lot of speculation that they weren't going to sign somebody like a Stephon Diggs because he may not necessarily fit the culture that Vrabel wants to establish. Well, they sat down with him. They met with him. They did their due diligence in terms of his medicals. And then in the process of meeting with him, they felt comfortable enough to bring him in and sign him, and they gave him a big contract. So oftentimes, again, we'll hear all this talk about character and guys not being character people and character players. But at the end of the day, until they step foot in that building and you sit down man to man, face to face, eye to eye, and have a conversation with them and try to figure them out, you're not really going to know what you're getting.
No, I agree. Look, like you said earlier, we need to get this over with because it's been, again, to the point of oversaturation. How much more can we talk about these kids? This is why you ultimately have the questions of character because people are just searching now. They're reaching for anything to talk about. This
they're
last
also
week,
doing it because they want a player to fall to them.
Of course. And look, again, if Carter is there, you run that card up. I don't care if he's kicking puppies at this point. Like, run that card up. You need that kind of talent. That's actually not true. We saw what happened with Mike Vick. People care about dogs.
Yeah, I don't think kicking puppies
but
would be appropriate. I think that would be a
but you
disqualifier.
but and
I don't think Abdul Carter will be here if he's
sure,
punting dogs over a bridge like Baxter.
sure, probably a bad example, but in general, they cannot afford to look at character over talent if the talent is that good, especially if this draft is as quote unquote bad as everybody thinks.
Well, it's not that the draft is bad. It's loaded at defensive line, edge,
Yep.
offensive tackle. It's a very good draft up front. And look, the receiver position is going to be good every year. I've talked about this ad nauseum with the spread offense.
Yeah,
Kids being exposed to that offense at a younger age, playing in these 7-on-7 tournaments.
Yeah.
There's always going to be receiver talent every single year. Running back, very good running back group. I think I will say this. I think this draft has gotten labeled unfairly, in my opinion, because think of it this way, okay? Let's just go position by position. I know quarterback sets the standard when it comes to an NFL draft. Not a great quarterback draft. If I had to grade it, I'd say it's probably a C, right? So then go to running back. Very good running back draft. Very good running back draft. Ashton Genty will be a top 10 pick. I think Omari and Hampton could end up being a top 15, top 20 pick. Okay? It's a deep running back draft. There's going to be talent at that position throughout all 3 days. Then you go to offensive line, offensive tackle. It's very good. You've got about 6 or 7 tackles right now in this draft that profile as starters in the NFL. Okay? Guard, solid. Center, solid. Then you go to tight end. You're going to have 2 first-round tight ends in Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland out of Michigan. That's pretty good. And then we talked about wide receiver. And then look, edge, interior defensive line, wagon. There's talent throughout all 3 days. Linebacker, really good group, very underrated group. Jahad Campbell's one of the best players in this draft. He's going to be a first-round pick out of Alabama. Now, it's not as good at corner as you get most years. So those positions, to me, oftentimes drive the opinions of drafts, quarterback, cornerback. That's why I think people look at this draft and say, oh, it's not a good draft. There aren't enough blue chip guys. There isn't enough talent. But the reality is it's not as talented at those 2 positions as the draft usually is. And I think that's what's been driving this conversation, that it's a bad draft.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. We just need to get to Thursday at this point. And honestly, you can make the argument the more important days to the Patriots are Saturday and Sunday. Like they have, in terms of like a core to build around going forward. Yeah, you have Christian Gonzalez, you have Drake May, you have some other guys, but you need some players that are going to be here for multiple contracts. Like I'm not sure the exact numbers. It's been talked about ad nauseum, but the amount of guys that they've drafted, say the last decade, that have only played 1 contract or maybe not even 1, that's a problem, and that's why they're in the spot they're in right now.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. Enormous problem for them. Real quick before we pivot to this past weekend with the spring games, I want to say on the Patriots here. Of course, Friday night is rounds 2 and 3. So let's say hypothetically they take Will Campbell at 4, just for conversation's sake. What do you want to see them do on Friday night? They've got a 2nd-round pick 38, and they have 2 third-round picks right now. What do you want to see them do with those 3 picks?
Ideally, package some stuff and get a receiver, so you don't have to rely on a rookie. I'm not sure if that's really feasible, but I'd like to see it. But receiver, running back, tight end. I'd like to see another corner if you can. I know you don't necessarily need it, but you can never have too many. But ultimately, look, they have so many different holes where I feel like you can't go wrong almost. But if I had to pick 1 or 2, it's receiver and it's probably tight end, because Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper are not getting any younger.
No, I agree. Now, I don't think tight end is going to be as important of a position for them. I could see them taking one potentially on day 3. I mean, again, they could surprise us on Thursday night and take Tyler Warren. We've talked about that. But I think at the end of the day, I think their focus is going to be up front. I think ultimately, if they settle on Will Campbell at 4, I think at pick 38, I don't see them going offensive line again, but I could see them going edge. I could see them going interior defensive tackle. I think a spoiler position here could be linebacker, off-ball linebacker. I also think at the end of the day, you could see them go wide receiver. I know they signed Diggs, they signed Mac Hollins, but they could also go wide receiver here. It's a deep group. There's going to be some really good talent there. Guys like Jalen Noel, guys like Higgins, another guy from Iowa State. I don't think Emeka Ibuka falls into the second round, but if he's sitting on the board at 38, that might be too much to pass up there. They might have to take him. But I think wide receiver will be in play in round 2. Now, as far as round 3 goes, this is now where I could see them going off the board unconventional. And what I mean by that is they could end up addressing a position like running back that may on the surface not seem like it's a need, but there could be a player there, a Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State, a player of that caliber, dare I say Cam Scatterbo, even though he didn't test great. A player like that could be sitting there in round 3. Running back could be a position that they could address in round 3. You mentioned tight end position they could address in round 3. Cornerback. I think the cornerback class in this draft is going to be really good in those middle rounds, 2 through 5. They could take a corner there as well. I mean, look, yeah, they signed Carlton Davis to pair him up with Christian Gonzalez. You have Marcus Jones in the slot, but I still think you can use another corner. And I would not be surprised if one of those 2 third-round picks, I should say, end up going cornerback with one of those picks.
No, I'm with you. And again, we talked about quarterbacks last week, just names under the radar, like a Seth Morgan. Like, you don't necessarily need someone that can come in and compete with Drake May. That's not going to happen. You just got rid of the one guy.
But Morgan is a guy that probably goes late day 3 or more realistically signs as an undrafted free agent.
Right. But in general, I could see them going quarterback at some point. You ultimately need a third. And again, you got rid of the guy that if they ever were going to compete with Drake May, it would have been Joe Milton. I don't think it ever would have been a real competition. But in terms of someone that could push him, you had a guy in the building already. So, and you don't want Drake getting complacent either. So I would like the idea of a rookie just sort of nudging him early on, sort of like Jimmy G did with Brady. You ended up getting some of the best years out of Brady because you took a quarterback. So I wouldn't mind that either. But ultimately, I think you have to go heavy offense, regardless of sort of what's out there. I think you have to go heavy offense those first 2 days. And then I do think they end up with an edge and a linebacker. You're going to see a multitude of both sides, but I think it'll be more heavy offense when it's all said and done.
Rock checks in, my man. Did you get the list on the 30 visits the Pats took? Yeah, we did. We have a Pats player tracker up there. We've had it up there now for about 3 weeks. So we update that when we get names. Thanks for checking in, Rock. Ken Matthias checks in as the draft is right around the corner. Do you both think it will what? It will be, okay, I see what Ken's doing here. It will be O-tackle with the pick at 4. We've been talking about that, Ken. I think it will be. I think if push comes to shove and they stick and pick, I think it'll be Will Campbell.
I was going to say, but you've been the last half hour. But no, yeah, ultimately, I do think
he might have just jumped on, man. It could be busy.
Fair. In the end, I think.
Thanks for checking in as always, Ken. We appreciate it.
Of course. I think tomorrow night when we're at Gillette, or Thursday night when we're at Gillette around, 8:30 or so, I think we're talking about Will Campbell.
I think so too. Ultimately, I because here's the thing: I don't think that offer is going to come in that's going to compel them to trade down. No, I think if they could, they would. Yeah. But I think it's going to have to be a substantial enough offer. And I know that this gets overstated every year, but I really truly think this draft starts with the Giants at 3. Forget about Tennessee; they're going Ward. I think Cleveland goes Hunter. This draft starts at 3. If the Giants pass up on Abdul Carter, then I think he's the pick. If they take Carter, I think it's Campbell.
Yeah, and just real quick to your point, Vrabel also said last week, discussions don't really start with that kind of stuff until pretty much now. Like today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, he said those calls will pick up once teams have all their intel locked in. So who knows? Maybe they get blown away. And we hear you.
I'm sure they'll get phone calls in the next couple of days. Absolutely. Yeah. Ken checks back in, or will they trade down and get some assets or draft capital? Again, I think if the right offer came along, they could do that. Ken follows that up with, I did just tune in, so take that, Stone. You You can now put a sock in it. Will you guys potentially be live after the pick is announced on Thursday? Yeah, we're working through that right now, Ken. We're either going to go live or we're going to do something on the pick. And certainly if they were to trade back into the first round, we would follow that up with as well. The plan is to go live at some point on Thursday night, but we're trying to work through that logistically. There's a lot of moving pieces. Obviously, there's going to be 30 people in the media workroom on Thursday night. And they're not going to have room for all of us, so we're going to have to figure out what we want to do logistically before we decide what we want to do in terms of our live stream or video coverage. The other thing to keep in mind here is we got to wait and see when they're going to make whoever that player is at 4 available to the media, because that also determines when we can go live and discuss it. So thanks for, again, checking in, Ken. We really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time, as always. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Now, day 3 is also going to be interesting because now you have some flexibility between rounds 4 and 7. You talked about quarterback. I do think that they take one late. If they don't go corner on day 3, I think they do come out of on day 2. I do think they come out of day 3 with a corner. Don't sleep on safety. I think they have depth there, but somebody like a Jonas Sanka from Virginia and Andrew Makuba from Texas, even though they didn't meet with Makuba in the pre-draft process. Players like that, I think, could be in play potentially late day 2, but more than likely early day 3. Both of those guys could be available to the Patriots then. And then, don't discount, even though they have a lot of bodies there, Kevin, don't discount them taking an interior offensive lineman, a guard or a center. They did it last year. We didn't think they were going to do it. They ended up drafting Layden Robinson out of Texas A&M. So they could go in a myriad of directions day 3. If we're looking at it from a needs perspective, they could stick to their needs and go from there. But I think at the end of the day, I could see them surprising us and going more best player available and thinking about a future contract situation than necessarily filling a need.
Yeah, look, I love the idea of safety. I wanted Holland as a free agent if it was possible. Like, I was honestly surprised they weren't more heavily in that market because I'm not sure Duggar can stay healthy, or at least not consistently. So, and you don't know what you're going to get from Jabril Peppers anymore after last year. Yeah, he came back, but he's had a little bit of injury history as well. So I think safety's not a must need, but or must have, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if they went there. And then you mentioned interior offensive line. You almost need to take a center. Like in my head, Drew Kendall is a perfect fit, and not just for the local Eagles. He's what they need. He's a young kid who can develop under a Garrett Bradbury and learn under him, but also help out if you ever need him, if you can't use a Cole Strange or something like that. So I think both of those positions, frankly, I'd be surprised if we don't see them go either one of those on day 3.
Yeah. And again, that's why I mentioned interior offensive line, because, again, you could see them go in that direction either late day 2, definitely early or middle part of day 3. I don't think they're just going to focus on tackle. Something tells me that they're going to bring in an interior offensive lineman, and as well as they should. I think at the end of the day, you're going to have a lot of bodies there competing to fill 3 spots. But again, it wouldn't hurt to bring in someone else to add to that competition. And sometimes, I mean, look, let's face it, once they get into training camp, they're going to be able to weed out some of these guys and get to a place where they keep the 3 or 4 guys inside that they're really comfortable with.
Which Vrabel said that last week, said the roster is going to look very different in August. So there's still a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, they could go in a myriad of directions here, and it's easy to start throwing out player names. And they've met with a lot of players throughout the pre-draft process. But I think at the end of the day, the focus should be more on positions and why they should go in that direction. But we shall see. You are watching / listening to the New England Football Show presented by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Sarianides. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Kevin Stone. And I do want to remind you that we are brought to you by Mortgage Right. If you're in the market to purchase your next home and sell your current home, purchase your first home, or refinance, give our friend Herb Devine a call, 781-254-2846. You can also shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. And yes, They'll be available to you this weekend as well, despite the NFL draft happening. All right, let's shift gears here now, Kevin. And again, we're going to have more NFL draft coverage for you guys throughout the week. We'll have our Patriots Pulse draft preview as well with myself, John Lyons, and potential other guests as well. So we'll see, to be determined, but we are going to have more draft talk for you ahead of Thursday. Let's talk some college football here, Kevin, before we wrap up the show. Of course, we had a busy weekend of college football action. We had spring games at UMass and URI. Our Charlie Adams was down in Kingston for the URI spring game, a competitive game that ended up with a score of 30-24. Rams look pretty good. Solid spring for Jim Fleming's squad. Looks like they've got some stability at quarterback, provided quarterback Devin Farrell could stay healthy. Good depth at running back. Good depth along the offensive line. The defense looked pretty good. Overall, I thought it was a really good spring for the Rams in terms of them building off of what was a historic season for them last year.
Yeah, I was going to say, doing the hunting now, or being the hunted now, it's a different mindset you have to take. And I think they attacked spring ball the right way. Look, the spring game, I think it was 34-28. I can't remember Charlie's story exactly, but you like to see that good back and forth. Like, this, and coaches talk about it all the time. This time of year, you don't want one side of the ball dominating the other, right? Like, you want to see that good back and forth. So that was good to see all spring. You mentioned Farrell. Look, if he's, like you said, if he's healthy, you already have the main ingredient. Like, if you have the guy, you're already ahead of the game.
Good
so,
spot.
yeah. So, look, the CAA, we talk about it every year. Between the CAA and the Ivy League, you can make the argument those are the two most competitive conferences in FCS. Can they win another CAA title? We have to get through training camp first, and obviously it's a long way away, but you should be encouraged if you're a Rams fan with the way spring ball played out. They stayed healthy, and it was competitive. That's all you could ask.
Yeah. And again, I think a lot of things do have to fall into place for them to make another CAA title run and make another playoff run. Obviously, you got to replace some key production, guys like AJ Pena, guys like Malik Grant on offense. Those guys they were a huge part of your team's success last year. But I think when I did my spring visit, one of the things I noticed is, and again, Fleming and his staff have done a great job through the years of recruiting, using the portal to their advantage. I think that they were well positioned to not necessarily replace those guys, but find production from other guys. I think at running back that they have some depth there to where they can get production from some other guys. Guys are going to be stepping up there. A guy like Moses Muse on defense, I think he's poised for a breakout season at outside linebacker for them. I think he's going to be their next terrific pass rusher, the former St. Ray's product out of Pawtucket. So they've got, again, they've done a really good job in recruiting, and they've done a good job of adding talent that can make a difference. Marquise Buchanan is back for them at wide receiver. So they're in a really, really good spot. I think the key for them is going to be, like we said, they got to keep quarterback Devin Farrell healthy. They've got to make sure that they stay true to their identity, which is run the football and lean on that offensive line. And that defense has got to get after people. And you have to replace a lot. It's not just AJ Pena. You got to replace Wesley Neal inside. You got to replace Carson Primrose. But they've done a really good job both in the portal and recruiting in terms of fortifying that roster. I think you saw that on Saturday where a lot of those guys stepped up and made plays in that spring game. I think the Rams should be fine. They should be in pretty good position. They'll definitely be once again in the mix to be the best CAA team in New England. And I think they'll be in the mix like they have been every year with Fleming, at least the last 4 years. I think it'll be a lot like that again. And I think that they have a pretty good shot at potentially getting another at-large playoff bid. Of course, UMass also wrapped up their spring, the first spring for new head football coach Joe Harasimiak. Our Ryan Barry was there for that one. Harasimiak has had a lot of good things to say, very pleased with what he saw on Saturday, talking about the effort of his team, talking about the tempo of the practices, the tempo of the spring game. He was very happy overall. A lot of good things to take from this spring. You got to remember, Harasimiak and his staff, when they came in, they turned the roster over pretty heavily. They brought in a lot of new faces. A lot of those new faces got acclimated. It was a pretty good spring for the UMass Minutemen. Program appears to be going in the right direction, at least when it comes to first impressions.
So Saturday was a good day, don't get me wrong. And as an alum, it sounds like Ryan Barry was encouraged by what he saw. But what stood out to me last week was what Joe Harris-Simiak had to say on Thursday. He was not happy, plain and simple, after that last practice. And what stood out to me was the amount of times that he talked about having to sit down and have hard conversations about guys that aren't fully buying in. And I'm paraphrasing slightly, but if you go back and watch, it's on YouTube, and we have the entire transcript on our site. He was not pleased with the way some guys are buying in. Now, part of me thinks, well, that's a good thing he's addressing it early, but the other half of me says, well, if you don't have guys buying in April to a brand new system, what are we going to see in September, October? So, as good as everything was on Saturday, and by all accounts, again, there's reason to be encouraged. It's a little worrisome if I'm a UMass fan and the head coach who's just again implementing that culture that we always talk about, and he's again in several different answers saying we have to have hard conversations and get rid of the guys that don't want to be here. You pause a little bit and say, what's going on? So, as encouraging as Saturday was, I'll be very curious to see how the offseason now goes in terms of the workouts and just the buy-in overall. That was slightly alarming to me if I'm a UMass fan, even though Saturday was good.
Yeah, well, it's alarming because he brought in a lot of new guys. They brought in
Right.
27 guys in the portal. So I think when you bring in a lot of new faces, there's going to be an adjustment period and a period of time for these players to get acclimated. Now, we don't know who he's talking about. In fairness, he could be talking about guys that were already on the roster.
Yeah,
and they're
absolutely
not buying in. They were brought in by the previous regime, and it's now time to move on from those guys.
But it's not something you hear in April, usually.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, again, look, it's not something you hear in April, but at the same time, he's going into his first year, and it's important to set a tone. And if guys aren't upholding their end of the bargain, then I think it's up to him and his staff to say, hey, listen, if you're not buying in, if you're not doing what we need you to do to turn this thing around, portal opens on April 18th. You're more than welcome to leave and go. And I think that's the message he's sending here. I think the one thing about Harris-Simiak is he's been a head coach before, a successful one nonetheless. He's been around good coaches. He's been in FBS football. He knows what he's doing. He's pulling the right levers here. He's pushing the right buttons. He knows that, hey, look, if it isn't going to be you, the portal opens on the 18th. It opened the other day. If it isn't going to be you, it's going to be someone else. We'll bring in other people. And I think that's the message here. But I'm curious to see, who is he sending that message to? Is that message being sent to guys that he and his staff have brought in? Or is that message being sent to guys that were already in the program?
So
my guess is it's guys that were already in the program. And if they don't want to buy in, then he's saying, look elsewhere.
Well, I was going to say, I think it is too, because of how many new guys you have. Like, some kids might feel entitled to a spot or feel like, I've been here for a while, I've put up with a lot of crap. Why is this kid before me now who hasn't been here? So I get it. But it makes you perk up if you're a UMass fan.
Well, the other thing you got to keep in mind here is all the stuff that happened in Tennessee with Nico Lava.
Yeah.
All the stuff that happened with him and them saying, hey, go for a walk. We're good. We're not paying you $4 million a year to play quarterback here. You just had Syracuse, their leading receiver, left the program after Fran Brown said, no, we're not paying you $2 million a year to play receiver here. No receiver's getting $2 million a year out of this program. What you're seeing, I think, Kevin, is a shift again now. After what happened in Tennessee 2 weeks ago, I think you're going to start to see a shift here now where a lot of these programs are going to say, no. We're willing to pay you, whether we have a tiered system or a straight up system where we pay you based on your position and the value we think you have. But we're not going to go over a certain number. And if that means you enter the portal and go somewhere else, so be it. Then we'll enter the portal and replace you. And so I think it's a tit for tat thing. And I think at the end of the day, I love seeing this because as much as I believe that players should be able to capitalize on their name, image, and likeness, this is getting out of control now. And don't give me this crap about coaches leaving programs. I'm sick and tired of hearing that nonsense. It's a lazy counter argument, and it's getting old, and it's stupid because one is not the other here. They're not the same thing, okay? Those guys are under contract. It's a different deal. Okay, these kids have an agreement with the program, but at the end of the day, I think what happened in Tennessee is gonna shift things a little bit here now, where coaches are gonna say, look, if you're not willing to buy in, then go somewhere else. We're good. We don't need you here. We're going to try to get this done with other people. And I think it's about time, because some of these kids, let's face it, they've become entitled, and they think that they can do whatever the hell they want, and they think that they can rule the roost. Well, that's fine. But if I'm a coach and I want to do things my way, ship them, send them somewhere else. They can go somewhere else. They can become someone else's problem. Yeah, you might lose a good player, but at the end of the day, big picture, as long as you have the support of your administration, it's probably the best thing for your program. So in the case here with Coach Harasimiak, yeah, he's probably sending a message. Look, if you don't want to buy into the way we're doing things, if you don't want to try to fit into our schemes, there's plenty of places for you to go find a new home. You can start that process on the 18th, and I'm sure some guys are probably going to enter the portal here. We're going to hear this in the coming days. A couple of other things from the UMass spring game. Quarterback competition was pretty good this spring between A.J. Hairston, the sophomore, and Grant Jordan, the Yale transfer. Jordan had a pretty good spring. A.J. Hairston appears to be the front runner right now, but I think that competition is going to go well into fall camp. And I'm not sure it even gets settled going into the season opener. So we'll see there. Wide receiver position, despite losing Jacoby Keeney-James, Minutemen appear to still have some pretty good talent. And they have a pretty good group coming back. Tyree Kelly, Dallas Elliott, among those guys that are returning that can make plays. Jake McConaughey as well is another receiver to keep an eye on. Secondary, Ryan talked about this on Saturday. A lot of new faces. That's been a position of strength under Don Brown. We kind of knew after they lost some of the guys they lost, Leonard St. Gourdine, Lake Ellis, Tyree Powell. We knew that there was going to be some growing pains there. It looked that way on Saturday. The secondary is going to need to do some more growing up in fall camp. But again, you can address some of that in the portal if you're Joe Harasimiak and your staff. So I think based on what we've seen coming out of UMass, Kevin, I think they had a good spring. I think Harasimiak's trying to set the tone. I thought the spring game did that. Now I'm curious to see what they do in the portal and how they progress throughout the rest of their offseason.
And it's funny, until I was reading Brian's story, I keep forgetting about the MAC. Like, they're going to be on national television this year. So I applaud Harasimiak for already trying to set that tone, like you talked about early on.
You're in a conference now.
I was going to say.
And that matters, to your point. That matters a lot more than people think when it comes to players, because
of course,
players don't want to buy in. You're no longer an independent. You're in a conference now that the exposure is going to be there. The money's going to be there. Either you're in or you're out. And I love that he's setting a hard line.
Yeah, it's massive for recruiting. And again, on national television, it's one thing to be embarrassed on Nesson on a Saturday, but if you're on a Tuesday night on ESPN and the whole country's watching in October, November, and you get your ass kicked, that's not going to help recruiting at all. So they need to set that tone very early.
And, of course, on Saturday, I was down at Brown University for a spring visit with the Bears. Bears graduating some key contributors, Jake Wilcox at quarterback, Mark Mahoney at wide receiver, Owen Stockton, Jordan DeLucia at running back. Up front, they have to replace Hayden Bozich and Jack Conley. But James Perry has also done a pretty good job, as is his staff, recruiting. So they've got a lot of quality returning. Of course, coming off a 3-7 season, Perry made some changes to his staff. He's brought in a new defensive coordinator, Dan Mulrooney, formerly the head coach at Anna Maria. He's also the head coach most recently at Lock Haven. Mulrooney comes to Brown, and he's going to bring a physical, aggressive, fast-playing defense. It's going to be predicated on guys flying to the football and making plays. And one of the things I noticed on Saturday, Kevin, is the demeanor of the defense. I mean, that there was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of hoopla. Guys are running the ball, taking good pursuit angles, supporting each other. They're a little undersized on defense. I mean, they've got some good young talent. They've got some speed. But Brown is definitely going to have some growing pains up front in terms of size. Plus, when you graduate guys like Kyle Philbin coming off the edge, that's a tough guy to replace. Strength of the defense is going to be their secondary. They do return Elias Archie and Chris Hudson, which I think is going to help them. Offensively, it's going to be a quarterback competition well into fall camp. You got James Murphy. You got Nolan Lazar. You got Ty Holtz. It's going to be a pretty good competition there. And look, if you're going to have a quarterback competition, you better have some talent at receiver to help those guys. They got two of the best in the Ivy League coming back in Ty Pezza, the North Kingstown, Rhode Island native, and Solomon Miller. So A lot of good things that I saw on Saturday at Brown. I love their running back room. Matt Childs kind of busted out last year as a true freshman. I had a chance to talk to Matt on Saturday. I think he's poised to have a big year. You got Quentin Brown coming back, Michael McGee. This is a good group. This is a good group, and it's a deep and talented group. And Perry likes to run the football, so Brown is poised to turn things around. And of course, the Ivy League now will have the opportunity to play in the FCS playoffs. But again, we talk about vibes this time of year. The vibe was pretty good down there.
So you mentioned the Ivy League playoff thing. I don't know how many more times we can say it, and we're going to say it probably 300 more between now and the season. But it's the most competitive league again. Them and the CAA. So do I think they'll be competitive again? Yes, but it also feels like it might be a slight step back type of season for them, just based on the guys you mentioned, who they have to replace, particularly on offense. We talk about URI having the guy at quarterback. We're not going to know much about the Brown situation until the season starts, really. So it's tough to really gauge what they're going to look like. You mentioned the receivers they have coming back. They've had one of the best offenses in the country for a couple years now. Where are they at there? So there's more question marks for me than answers right now with Brown. But I just keep going back to the Ivy League being so competitive. I think they're going to be in it because everybody is usually in it. Like there's never a team really that's completely out of it 2 or 3 weeks in. You know what I mean? So I'd expect them to be competitive, but I just don't know if they're going to make that run with the Harvards, with the Yale, with the Columbia again, with the Dartmouth again. I just don't know if they have the horses this year that they've had years past. You mentioned being undersized too. When you play a Harvard or a Yale, who are known for being huge up front, that's a little worrisome as well. But again, it's the Ivy League and you never know. So a little too early to sort of pinpoint where they might be on the pecking order this year. But Perry's a great coach. They'll be in every game. It's just a matter of, which way the ball sort of bounces.
Yeah, and Dartmouth, of course, kicked off spring ball last week as well. A lot of new faces there for Sammy McCorkle's squad. Grayson Sonia back at quarterback, though. Got a good group of receivers back. They do got to replace Q Jones at running back, but they do bring back Delby Lemieux in a solid offensive line. Got some talent up front. They do got to replace Kyle Brown. Defensively, they've got some good talent coming back as well. They do have to replace some guys up front in the front seven, but overall, early reports out of Hanover are that Dartmouth looks pretty good. Of course, Shane Montgomery, former UMass offensive coordinator, is Big Green's offensive coordinator now. And one thing you know about Coach Montgomery, they're going to line up and they're going to run the football. They're going to use their running game to set up their passing game, their play action game, their drop back passing game, and their perimeter screen game. So, like I said, we're hearing good things out of Dartmouth. We hope to have the opportunity to get up there at some point this spring and see Big Green. Same thing goes for UNH and Maine as well. All right, Kevin, final thoughts here as we're on the eve of the NFL draft here in a couple of nights.
Yeah, 3 quick ones, actually. I had nothing last week. So first, I want you to take on Metallica at the NCAA football game. Is that a sellout thing to you?
Yes, I hate it.
Okay.
I hate it. And you know what? I'm 50 years old. I'm an old school hard rock metal guy. It pains me. AC/DC's touring right now. It pains me to see AC/DC songs being used on Walmart commercials. It pains me to see my favorite band, and I love Metallica. I was supposed to go see them on Saturday night in Syracuse. Unfortunately, I couldn't get up there. That would have been my 15th time seeing them. But it pains me to see stuff like this because what it reeks of to me is they now recognize that this is the end of the road for them when it comes to touring. And I get it. They need to make money and they need to monetize their music. But it really just bothers me when you're a specific genre, if you're being used in commercials, well, you're not really that genre anymore. And now we see this whole thing with the band. And part of it is, of course, Virginia Tech comes out to Enter Sandman, and that factors into this as well. They are going to be playing in Blacksburg as part of this tour. But for me, it's not so much a sellout thing. I'm just like, all right, you're never going to fully be mainstream if you're Metallica. Your music isn't mainstream enough for some people. And so while I get you're going to sell off some of your music, I don't know. This stuff just bothers me. Again, it reeks of a band that's now entering their 60s and they recognize our touring days are going to be few and far in between here. We're going to need to find other ways to make money. This is another way for them to make money.
Well, not only that, but the kids playing the game now Like I'm on the older side of a guy who would have that game. Who really knows who Metallica is at that age? And sure, they're in a historic enough
Well,
band.
yeah, I disagree with that. Metallica's the
No,
biggest band in the world. I mean,
oh sure, they're
there was a kid at my school the other day, a sixth grader. He went to both shows in August. So if you're raising your kid right, they're not listening to wussy crap like Blink 182. They're listening to they're listening to Metallica, not Green Day. I think to your point, Metallica to me is transcendent in that way. But yes,
sure.
generally speaking, most kids today would have no idea who these bands are.
Sure. So that was unnecessary too. My father actually liked Kiss and Metallica, so I'm sure he was slightly disappointed with my music
I
taste.
thought you were going to say that your father was into Blink. I was like, there's no way Mr. Stone liked Blink 182.
Metallica, Kiss, AC/DC, Fleetwood Mac, a little bit of everything. But
and AC/DC's touring right now, and they sound really good.
I was just saying,
which I'm surprised. I mean, Angus Young looks like he just got rolled out of Shady Green's nursing home. He's 70 going on 80, but they're still kicking ass.
Two more quick things. One, some of the stuff on Twitter last week regarding Grayson James, for people to claim they're fans and throw random crap against the wall, I can assure you he's not leaving. You know who I've talked to. I am 99.999% sure that he is not going anywhere.
It's a lot of nines.
For a fan base that wants this team to not be mediocre for the first time since 2009, to throw that kind of crap out there at a time where the transfer portal is already a big enough shit show, what are you doing? But for those fans that are smart enough to not do that and care about the future of the program, do not worry. He is not leaving. I want to get that out there just because there was so much dumb stuff last week. It had to be addressed. And lastly, our Sophia Sargent is competing in Miss New Hampshire. I believe it's this weekend. So just wanted to shout her out and wish her good luck. She's been a big help to us this past year, and we're rooting for you.
Yeah, she is a talented young lady that's going places. She's already doing stuff with Nesson. She's got a modeling career. She does TV. She is awesome. And above all else, she's just a great person. She's a great kid. So
she puts up with us.
Yeah, she puts up with us. And yes, I called her a kid because I'm old enough to be her father. So
she's 23.
Right. I'm 50, so I'm old enough to be her old man. So at the end of the day, she is a terrifically talented young lady, and we're excited for her and can't wait to see what she does this weekend in competing for Miss New Hampshire. We wish you the best. And, of course, Jordan, your favorite. Jordan is competing.
Look, I have heard people say that lately. I'm still not convinced I'm wrong.
I think you are. I think it's Jordan. I think it's Jordan.
By the way,
Jordan.
Not
Jordan.
I called this a few weeks ago, and you laughed at me. She's becoming a problem already. I'm sure you've seen the videos of her practice. Not great. Now, that's a Bill thing. I get it. He doesn't need to give a shit anymore. He's got his life set. He's doing whatever the hell he wants out there. She's going to be a problem for that program. Mark my words.
She's not going anywhere, though, so it doesn't matter. I agree with you. But that depends on who she's dealing with in regards to her being a problem. Nonetheless, Jordan is running for Miss Maine. Apparently, she's from Maine. Who knew that? I thought the only thing that came from Maine was Poland Spring Water, but apparently she's from Maine as well. So,
well, I guess she's a big lobster fisherman, or just fisherman in general advocate because of her family. That's all.
I thought you were going to say she's a lobster fisherman. I'm like, what the hell are we talking about here? She's running the UNC football program. She's in a beauty pageant, and now you're trying to tell me that she's fishing for lobsters? Cut the crap. That's not.
Well, look at her Instagram. She could be.
I'm not saying she doesn't advocate for it, but for a second there, I thought you were saying she actually goes out and catches lobsters. I'm like, no way.
Although
there's no way Jordan does that.
Would you be surprised if that's a date night for Bill? I wouldn't.
I don't know. Does he have a weird kinky fetish with lobster?
It just seems like he'd like a weird.
Okay, let's just move on here. We're about this show's about to go to hell here, and we're about to say something stupid and get shut down here about Bill and Jordan. All right, and I asked you for your final thoughts, and you gave me like 5 of them. So no final thoughts for you for the next month.
It's fine. I usually don't have any.
All right, well, you'll be seeing a lot more of me and Stone, which I feel bad for you guys. But you'll be seeing a lot more of me and Stone this week. Of course, Patriots picking number 4 overall on Thursday night in the first round of the NFL draft. Rounds 2 and 3 on Friday, 4 and 7 on Saturday. We'll have full coverage as always. And I do want to say, you're going to have great coverage options throughout the weekend here in New England. We have one of the best media groups in the country. Give us a look as well. Take a look at our content. Take a look at our video content. It's always nice to mix it up, and I think you'll like what you see. But that will do it for this episode of the New England Football Show. For Kevin Stone, I'm John Sarianides. We'll be back with you later this week, and we'll be back with you on the New England Football Show next Monday. Until then, have a happy and safe week, and as always, peace.
See ya.